What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish the Moment. Today I want to cover an interesting topic that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Is it better to try to find a secret area on your lake that no one else is fishing, or is it better to try to find the secret lure and fish it in the community holes, the places that everyone's fishing? So let's get into it. So the reason I wanted to make this video is because I just got done fishing 2 days on Lake Dardanelle and struggled big time. There's actually several big tournaments out there when I was there. We also had the first big cold front of the fall and temperatures were in the 30s. And also Lake Dardanelle is fishing really small because of all the rain we've had this year. And really the only places these fish are setting up are the places where there's clear water. And that basically eliminates about 2/3 of the lake. The whole main river is washed out and the backwaters are the only place that guys are really catching fish. And so because of that, it was really tough to find a spot to fish. And before I went out on the lake, I tried to plan out some of the areas I wanted to fish, and I actually ran to my first 9 areas, and every single one of them had at least one boat on them, if not 2 or 3. And I was like, what's going on? Why are there so many people on all these spots? And so I actually started trying to run some of my secret areas I knew about in the past, and there were still people on those. Apparently those have become community holes over the years. And even when I ran like 5 miles up the lake, tried to go to a place that I thought no one's gonna be in here, there were like 3 boats in it. So I could not find a place to fish. And I was thinking to myself, okay, what should I do? Should I try to find a hidden away bank that no one's fishing, maybe fish something that looks kind of ugly, doesn't look that great, and try to fish that and hope I can find some fish? Or should I just go right behind people with a unique bait and try to basically pick off the fish that these other guys are missing? And during my day on Lake Dardanelle, I decided to try to look for the secret areas. And it didn't really work out that well, but sometimes it does. And it really got me thinking, okay, well, should I have decided to go fish the community holes, go bump boats with people, and throw something a little bit different, a unique bait? Or should I have kept looking for these secret areas, trying to get away from the fishing pressure and hope to find a small group of fish that wasn't affected by the fishing pressure? And so I want to talk about the pros and cons of doing both in this video. When I decide to fish the secret areas or try to find secret areas, and when I decide to just go beat bank behind people or fish the community holes with unique baits, and also get into some of the unique baits I like to use. So should be a really interesting video, and I'm going to be talking about this a lot in my upcoming videos going forward, trying to dial this in even better. So first up, let's talk about fishing secret areas. And what I mean by secret areas are areas where people are not likely to fish. And normally the secret areas can be grouped into 2 different categories. The first is an offshore area that looks pretty much terrible on the map, doesn't have any interesting contour lines, maybe the map is wrong, but there's actually something down there, whether it's a brush pile, a shell bed, something like that that's off the bank. Or it's a bank that just looks absolutely terrible. Maybe it's a mud bank with nothing on there. Maybe there's like 2 or 3 stumps though down this bank, and these fish are setting up on those. And so the common denominator with these secret areas is it's basically places that don't look good at all, but there happens to be something there that these fish are related to. And these areas can be really tough to find because you might go down 30 ugly banks or graph over 30 kind of flat, nothing looking offshore areas and not find anything. And then the 31st one that you graph over, boom, the fish are there. And so it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of preparation to find them. And some of the things I look for normally on these areas, again, are some sort of unique cover. One of my favorites is shell beds. And if you have a hummingbird unit, you can actually set your hummingbird to the red-green color palette, and you can actually graph for hard bottom areas that pop out from the soft bottom. The hard bottom will pop as red, soft bottom will be this green color. And so that's a really interesting tool that I like to use. I'll graph over big flats, kind of random, nondescript areas, and sometimes find some good fish. Another thing I like to look for, especially when I'm fishing down the banks, is any sort of isolated rocks, isolated stumps, or isolated trees that are out in the water. And there are times when I just maybe run down the bank and just look for one log that's in the middle of nowhere, just one log down the bank. I'll pull up, I'll fish that one log, and I'll move on. And so instead of looking for a bank that's covered with all nice types of cover, all kinds of targets to fish at, I'll look for individual pieces of cover that are just randomly scattered throughout, and I might try to run 30 or 40 of these. And it takes a lot of time because you run up, fish one spot, move on, one spot, move on, one spot, move on. But a lot of times that's what it takes when the fish are really pressured to catch some fish. The other approach you can take is trying to fish a secret bait in the community holes, or basically places where everyone's fishing, everyone knows about. And normally this is a really good approach if you don't have a lot of time to practice and you don't have time to look for the secret areas, but you can kind of guess where some of the most popular areas are just based on seeing a ton of boats around the area, or if you just know like there's a riprap bank like on Dardanelle, there's all these riprap roads, there were 1,000 people fishing on the riprap roads, and these fish are seeing the same baits over and over again: spinner baits, square bill crankbaits, jigs, you know, beaver style baits, chatterbaits, classic baits. And really, to get a feel for what people are fishing, just go to the Tackle Warehouse top sellers page and look at the top selling hard baits, soft baits, all these things. What you want to do is basically avoid any of those baits. All the baits you see on the top selling pages on Tackle Warehouse, don't fish those baits, because those baits are going to be the ones that people are throwing a ton. And so there's several rigs and baits that I like to throw that are a little bit different from what the average fisherman is throwing, and that help me get a few extra bites even if I'm fishing right behind someone and kind of fishing used water. The first thing I like to do is throw unique soft baits, and two of my favorites are the Strike King 4-inch caffeine shad. This is actually a fluke style bait, but it's a little bit heavier than your average fluke, and it sinks really, really well. It has a kind of interesting shimmy action. It catches a lot of big fish, and I can go behind people with this bait right here and catch a ton of fish in clear water when the fish are a little bit finicky, skip it around boat docks. And I like the 4-inch size, gets a little more subtle. I can just basically dead stick it in the water and catch a lot of big fish on this. And the other baits are kind of interesting, unique creature baits that you might not see very often. This is actually the Strike King Smokin Rooster. You actually can't find this, you won't be able to find this online because this is a discontinued bait. That's why I'm throwing it. I like fishing baits that maybe are discontinued, things that people aren't throwing a lot. One bait I throw down in the south a lot that not many people throw is a tube. So I'll throw a flipping tube with a rattle in it. A lot of times baits that these fish are seeing don't have rattles in it, so I'll fish baits that are just kind of interesting, different from what the fish are used to seeing. And a lot of times that can get some extra bites and get some better fish in the boat for you too. The next category of baits are my small baits, my mini baits, and right here I have a Strike King Mini Pro Model spinnerbait. This is actually, again, a old discontinued bait, but there's a bunch of small little spinnerbaits on the market. There's a little Mr. Money spinnerbait by Strike King that's good, and then a lot of these small little compact spinnerbaits from other companies. And then I have right here is a mini buzz bait, and so these mini baits a lot of times will get you a lot of extra bites for the fish that are used to seeing a regular size spinnerbait, a chatterbait, a crankbait. And if you go in with these little bit smaller style baits, smaller presentations, a lot of times you can draw more bites, and the size of the fish that bite these baits aren't any smaller than the fish that bite the other baits. It's just they're so used to seeing the same baits over and over and over again that you can trick some of those fish into biting with something a little bit more finesse, a little more subtle, but baits you can still cover water with. And so I throw a lot of these mini spinner baits, buzz baits, mini crankbaits a lot, and those will get a lot of extra fish in the boat if I'm fishing behind people. Next thing I like to do is fish unique baits that are popular in other parts of the country but not popular in my area. And so, for example, you have a hair jig here, and a hair jig is a bait that's super popular in Tennessee. People throw them all over the Tennessee River. Everyone throws hair jigs, but not very many people throw hair jigs in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, and Missouri where I fish. And so I catch a ton of fish. I've caught a ton of fish this year on this hair jig, fishing it in places where people fish a drop shot, fish a swim bait, things like that. And I find just taking baits from other parts of the country that are popular and repurposing them here a lot of times can get you a few extra bites. And so I try to really keep a pulse on what other tournaments around the country are being won on, what other baits are popular around the country, and I try to use them here, and usually it works out pretty well. One style of bait I throw a lot and a lot of tournament anglers like to fish, especially guys on the Elite Series, Major League Fishing Tour, stuff like that, are flat-sided crankbaits, especially balsa wood crankbaits. And these balsa wood crankbaits are have a really subtle action. They have a unique vibration and a unique feel in the water because they're made of this balsa wood. And a lot of times you can go behind people who are fishing traditional square bills like a Strike King KVD 1.5, a Lucky Craft 1.5, and you can get a few extra bites just by throwing this flat side crankbait. And I've caught so many big fish on this bait over the years and won so many tournaments just fishing this bait because it's a little bit unique, a little bit different from your average crankbait. The last thing you can do is fish unique rigs, and this is actually the Tokyo Rig, and I threw this for the first time yesterday actually in a video because I was trying to figure out some different rigs to throw. I was getting a little bit frustrated by my day in Lake Dardanelle, and I wanted to start experimenting with new unique baits. And so this Tokyo Rig is really cool. It kind of is like a mini drop shot rig, and a lot of guys seem to be doing well on this rig. And it just gives the fish a little bit different look at baits. Instead of having the pegged sinker or your regular slip sinker on the line, it creates like this mini drop shot rig. And I remember back in the day when I was fishing in Wisconsin and the drop shot was just coming into play, I fish a drop shot all the time because no one was fishing it, and I was able to catch a ton of fish because I was fishing a unique rig. And so now with the internet and everything going on, it's a lot harder to find these unique rigs and find them yourself. The pros are pretty tight-lipped about them, but if you can find a rig that's a little bit unique, that gives the bait a different presentation from the other anglers, a lot of times you can put extra fish in the boat right behind other fishermen. So in my mind, those are two good options for catching bass when your fishery is highly pressured and there's boats everywhere. And so the next question you might have is, well, which is better, fishing the secret area or the secret bait? And in general, I find that I've had the most success in tournaments when I find the secret area, the place where no one else is fishing, maybe a subtle piece of cover, a hidden piece of structure that no one knows about. And that's because those fish are fresh. I can throw any bait down there, and I'm not going to have to worry about other people beating up on those fish. And when you fish in really competitive tournaments, it can be really hard to find those secret areas because either the other anglers will find them, and even if you think the area is secret, you'll find that at least some other person finds it, or that it takes a really long time to find those areas. And so it might take you 3, 4, 5 days on the water to consistently find secret areas before a tournament. And that's why a lot of guys who are locals do so well consistently in tournaments. They can be on the lake 3, 4, 5 days a week, and they can find these subtle little areas because they fish out there so much. Or like the guy in the most recent Costa Series tournament on Grand Lake, they can plant their own brush piles. And so these are the type of things that can set tournament anglers apart. And if you're really good at using electronics and graphing and setting up yourself for success in practice, a lot of times you can find secret areas more often than not, and that's what a lot of the best pros in the world do. But you don't always have a really long practice period. You can't be out in the water 3, 4 days in a row before a tournament. And so in that case, a lot of times, I like to focus on trying to find the secret bait instead. And what I'll do is I will find the best community areas where either I see a lot of boats fishing or just places that I can tell are community holes just because they look good on the map. And I'll spend my one practice day just trying to identify the best bait to fish in those community areas. So really, it's not as much about trying to locate fish, it's more about trying to figure out what gets the fish to bite. And so I'll go to riprap, I'll go to really obvious stretches of grass, laydowns, lily pad fields where everyone seems to be fishing, and I'll throw these unique baits, and normally I can at least put some fish in the boat consistently that way. I might not win every single tournament, but when you don't have that much practice and you're competing against guys who are fishing out there all the time, it's hard to overcome the secret area. And so it's sometimes just better to go with a secret bait and come out of there with a limit of fish, catch some decent fish, and be on your way. And so there are a lot of different ways to catch fish in tournaments. I mean, you could even go fish normal baits in the community holes and catch them if you get there first. So, there's a lot of different approaches. Doesn't mean that what I'm talking about here is the only way to do it, but my plan over the next few months and the next years, hopefully, is to refine which is better, trying to find the secret area or the secret bait. And I want to figure out which baits are the most productive when I'm fishing behind people, what are some secret baits that I might be able to share with you guys. And I'd love to hear your input too. If you have some secret rigs, some ways to fish baits that are unique, anything like that, leave it in the comments below. I know probably most people won't because they don't want to give up their secrets, but definitely something I'm gonna try to figure out myself and share, and then I'll have to find new secrets again because I'll share them on YouTube, and then it'll just be this constant never-ending process. But that's what I got myself into. That's what I love to do. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the journey along the way. So hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was something to get your mind racing and maybe give you some ideas for your upcoming tournaments or just upcoming fishing days if you fish on Saturdays when there's a lot of people around. So thanks again for checking out this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.